Welcome to our program, Coach-to-Coach. Today's guest is Oli Mansfield. Oli is a certified clarity coach and has a number of other qualifications, including Level 7 Executive Coaching and Mentoring from the Institute of Leadership Management, Robbins Madanes Strategic Intervention Coach and Breakthrough Specialist, Functional Diagnostic Nutritionist Practitioner and Clarity Academy member, and CHEK HLC Level 3 with the CHEK Institute. Oli and I trained together with Jamie Smart on clarity certification training and are now in the midst of Jamie's advanced coach training and clarity professional programs. It's been my pleasure to work with Oli on these programs, and now it's my pleasure to welcome Oli to Coach-to-Coach. Thanks for joining us today, Oli. It's so nice to see you.
It's good to see you, Greg. Thank you for such a very warm and kind introduction.
Yeah, my pleasure. The way I like to get these things started is to ask what first sparked your interest in coaching?
That's a great question. It's a big question. I think I started about 23 years ago in rehabilitation and training and performance training. And what fascinated me was when I started working with people, all kinds of people from all walks of life, from entrepreneurs, leaders of industry to children, is people would hit stumbling blocks, if it be a back problem or a relationship problem. And some people would get better and some people wouldn't. And then you'd go and learn some more. And I had a journey of studying, which I think a lot of us do. And I can come back to that. But it's just fascinating what gets in our way. And so over my journey, in the last 7 years, it really came to fruition that our behavior and behavioral psychology, and then in the last few years with clarity and Jamie Smart and the 3 principles, how important where our experience and how our mental state works leads the way, really. So even before the physical, the mental and emotional, there's something further upstream which plays a massive part in us hitting our goals. And growth, what I love is growth is such an important part of all of our lives. If it's adding a 0 to our salary, or taking off seconds to our speed, or increasing the members of our family, we all love growth. And it's spring here in England, and just seeing the tulips come up and open up is just beautiful. And I think that I have a hunger for growth, and I have a hunger to see people succeed and reach their true potential and thrive in life. And I guess that's what really got me involved in coaching on a business level, but also on a personal level. I've needed it. I think everyone should have a coach. And through my tougher times, and there have been tough times, I've had moments of huge insight which have really carried me, helped my family, and made a huge difference to my life. So yeah, coaching is something that is just an essential in life now.
I love it. As a fellow coach, I love that. Coaching is essential. It'd be a good tagline on a business card.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your practice, how you're working and who you're working with.
Cool. Well, when I was with the CHEK Institute, I spent a long time with the CHEK Institute, which is a California-based company with a guy called Paul Chek, who's phenomenal in his own right when it comes to holistic health and rehabilitation and performance. And we got taught about the 6 foundations of health, which were thought, breathing, hydration, mastication, which is chewing or diet, circadian rhythms, which is sleep, and then movement or exercise. And they kind of had a hierarchical order. And I, intellectually, I got that. And thought was number 1. And I kind of, I for many years interpreted that as a state of mind. And you've got to focus on things, and what you focus on, you feel. And like I said, in the last few years, I suddenly realized that thought is much, much bigger and has a huge effect on all the other foundations of health below that. So when it comes to my work, I work with people on a number of levels, from rehabilitation, if people need it, to I work with, like I say, leaders of industry who are stressed or depressed or struggling. And I've just worked with a young person going through some exams. And I'm working with a lady who has just found out she might be on the spectrum. and feeling depressed about that. So there's a huge array. I haven't got a niche, I would say. And I'm okay with that. I think, like I say, we've all got times when we need to be directed in the right way. So my practice is very varied. And I think what's most fascinating is I've met and worked with some very wealthy people who are unhappy. I've worked with some very wealthy and successful people financially who are very happy. And I've worked with some people who are financially not so successful who are very happy. And I've worked with people who are not financially successful who are very unhappy. So it just kind of points to, with my clients now, going from outside in thought of, I need something materialistic to make me who I am, which I think we've all been there in some way. I know I did it with education. Once I've got another qualification, I'll be okay and I'll have the confidence and I won't be an imposter and I might be good enough, to wanting the extra car or the bigger house. So with any client, whatever they are needing or would like, firstly, I just know they're not fixed and they're not broken. And secondly, I just want them to go inside and know that they will have all the answers they need within them, and it's okay. And that's when the healing really starts. We have this innate ability to heal, I believe, and I've seen it with myself and others. So once we calm ourselves down and we get some clarity, anything is possible. And that's what excites me.
Yeah, me too. Can you share some examples with us of how coaching has helped either yourself or some of your clients?
Yeah, certainly. With myself, I've had some huge insights with the thanks to my peers like your good self and all our colleagues on clarity and other groups. My insights have come definitely from being stuck in my head intellectually and then experiencing the wisdom of what I would call the heart, but that wisdom, that innate wisdom which runs through all of us, that life essence, which I guess powers us. I've been on a hospital bed, punishing myself mentally about who I am I good enough, I'm a fraud, all kinds of things, literally punishing myself. And then luckily with my wisdom and the knowledge that I've received and my coaching, just dropping out of that thinking and suddenly finding an inner peace where I knew everything was okay and I had everything I needed. And once that kind of comes about, you then go, right, now what do I need to do? And you can start taking action, because action is needed. It's not about just sitting cross-legged and under a waterfall. That's not the case at all. But it's about knowing that once you settle down, you can then make a plan of action. And that's where the other foundations of health come in. You can start breathing, you can start working on your nutrition or your sleep or your movement or your rehab. But if you miss out on that vital link of actually calming yourself, you're just going to be setting off the incorrect hormonal pathway, stress hormones, and going into a fight or flight pattern. And that really is not a state where you can be healing yourself. So, and personally, it's just had a phenomenal impact. I can't express how much of an impact it has had on my life, probably saved my life in some ways. And then also the gratitude I have for the love and happiness I have in my family and my friends, like your good self. I'm just richer for it. And so that's the number one thing that plays out when it comes to how coaching's impacted my life. And then secondly, with just coaching with clients, being able to share the stories and metaphors and having that deep listening and to be able to listen to people, because listening to people is just a wonderful thing. And to be listened to is something that many people don't experience in life. So getting the opportunity to connect with people and listen to them, and then guide them through their own personal journeys is just an honor and a privilege. And like I say, I've worked with people who have had severe injuries for accidents to leaders who don't know where to head next. And actually, the answers all come from with them. I don't have a clue. But just hanging out with them and that deep listening and deep connecting makes a huge difference, and the heavy lifting is done much easier by the client, and results are just around the corner. We're only one thought away, as we've been told many times.
Yeah. One thing I'm really curious about is kind of this connection between physical healing and coaching that you do. So you've mentioned rehabilitation a number of times, and you mentioned back injuries. I actually suffered a bad back injury myself in December of 2021, I guess, playing hockey. And I'd like to say it was a big hit or whatever, but it wasn't. I just basically tripped over the blue line and wrenched my back. But I was in bed for like 6 weeks. But, we often, I don't know, ignore or discount this connection between mind and body. And I'm just wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing when you're working with rehabilitation clients with a physical injury and how the mental aspect of it comes into play.
Yeah. I think what I call the pain doctor, and I would say the pain doctor is our best friend, which most people query me on. But the pain doctor is our best friend and likes to stab us in the front. So when the pain doctor comes along and we suffer some kind of issue or dis-ease in the body or dysfunction in the body, what we want is we want to get away from that. We want to have results. And I think that's just not how life plays out. And I think there's gifts, and I think there's lessons to be learned in everything. So, for instance, when I got really poorly, it was massively to do with the glasses I was wearing when it came to my work ethic and trying to be the best, trying to achieve, trying to support myself and my family through a world that was against us and circumstances that were against us. And I believe that circumstances affected my experience. And I think that when you realize that, it's you creating your experience, or who you really are, that life essence, creating your experience moment to moment, you can realize you can't be a victim of circumstance. Now, you might think, what on earth has that got to do with a back problem? But when we settle down from, like I would call, running away from the lion, then our stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline relax, and we can start to create rest and repair hormones like DHEA, testosterone, estrogens to heal ourselves. So if we just want the back fixed without actually looking at the other foundations of health and changing, most importantly, our focus on how we see things and how things are playing out, in my experience, a pain doctor will return. And he'll return either with more physical issues, or he'll return with more financial issues or more relationship problems. So there's something to be said for being really grateful for the pain doctor. And I don't wish any pain on anyone, and I don't want anyone to go away who's in pain thinking that I'm saying they deserve it or anything. That's truly not what I'm saying. But there's always some good to come out of any situation, or that's definitely the way we've got to angle it, and then take a deep breath with that and go from there.
Yeah, I like that. The perspective that everything's a gift is, for me, has been a very powerful realization as well. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what that gift is, but knowing that there's something in there to be learned from it is very helpful.
Yeah, I think that what you focus on, you feel. And I think that I often visualize it as a fork in the road when we hit these issues, whatever they may be. And the case is that we're either going to take it as I'm a victim of circumstance, and and I get that, and I've been there, and I've laid on a hospital bed punishing myself for it. Or you look down the other road and you're going, right, okay, this has happened for a reason. Now, what can I do about it? At least create options. Let's get future focused. I just, surely that's the best way to then start, planning and taking action. Like Jamie Smart says, clarity plus action creates results. So wherever you're sat right now, I would be first, then do, and then eventually the have will come. So, it's a be, do, have formula. But being is much more important than the having, much as we all kind of hunger after that.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when.
You've mentioned a couple times the word insights, which obviously in the training that you and I have done, we know is kind of the key ingredient to to life, really. But I'm curious if you could share some either a big insight you've had yourself, or a big insight that one of your clients has had that has made a difference in their life, that kind of, as insights do come out of nowhere and all of a sudden everything's different. If you had any examples you could share.
One of my most memorable, but I don't know how much sense it will make, but it was after a weekend we had together, on a clarity weekend, and it was an okay weekend. It wasn't full of what I thought was impactful stuff or meaty interventions or hallelujah moments.
Mm-hmm.
And I came down on a Sunday. It's a long couple of days, as we were talking about earlier. My wife asked, "How was your weekend?" And I said, "Yeah, it's okay." It was nothing more than, it felt like nothing more than that. And then we had dinner, and then I took my daughter to bed and said goodnight to her, as always, and then came back downstairs and looked at my wife and just burst into tears. Mm. And she was obviously panicked because, I'm not someone that, if I'm going to cry, that's absolutely fine to cry. But it's usually for a reason. And she was like, "What's wrong?" And I couldn't answer. I was like, I don't know what's wrong, but I just feel free from criticism and judgment. I had nothing on my mind. It felt very spacious, and that everything was okay. And, if we could, if you could be in that space all the time, it would be great. Mm-hmm. But it's just not how our mind works, because obviously with the human experience, we need to have these emotions to love and to experience, mm-hmm. and to keep ourselves alive in this materialistic world. But yeah, that was a huge insight, and it's something I wish for everyone to experience, mm-hmm. because it's a breath out. It's just a breath out, and it's just a breath of love, and it's just okay, from here I can do anything. Yeah. And that's kind of my target with working with anyone, and hanging out with anyone, is just to feel that, and wish people the opportunity to be free of criticism and judgment for themselves in their internal dialogue, and also for others, because I think the world would be a richer place if we were all jumping to the same beat at a higher level, resonating at a level which is about happiness, love, and growth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. The freedom, and you mentioned early on in our conversation about what's getting in the way, and when you get whatever's in the way out of the way, what's left is freedom.
Yeah,
and it's an awesome place to be. So, Oli, if there's one thing that you'd want people to know, what would that be?
Oh, that's a tricky question. No, I know as a truth and as a principle that we all have everything inside of ourselves already. Everything that we need is there. Like you said, we just got to get it out of our way, drop the stories, all the learned information and knowledge, the wounds and wisdoms of our parents and teachers, and just hang out in that space where you've got this and everything is okay. And that doesn't mean that circumstances don't happen. Bad things happen in this world, and my heart goes out to many who are suffering. But there's always that opportunity to still move in the right direction when we drop out of that whole load of thinking. So yeah, my one bit of advice would be just to know in your heart that you have everything you need already within yourself.
Mm. Very powerful. So if people are interested in learning more about your coaching practice and finding out what you're up to, where's the best place for them to go to?
Always happy to have a conversation. So either drop me an email or look at my website is olivermansfieldcoaching.co.uk. But I'm sure you'll be able to find me in a few different places. So more than happy to welcome anyone for a chat, and we look forward to connecting.
Great. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure, and good to see you, Greg.
Yeah, good to see you. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah.